All right, so get ready because today we're diving into a story that's seriously messed up. We're talking police corruption in Baltimore.
Oh, yeah. This one's a doozy.
It really is. And we're using excerpts from the American Scandal podcast, specifically the episode called Benched.
Okay, yeah, I've heard of that one.
It centers around Wayne Jenkins, a cop who went from like hero status to the center of this massive scandal. And it's just wild how this guy managed to operate under the radar for so long.
Yeah. You know what's really key to understanding all of this is the setting.
Okay, so like the backdrop of what was going on in Baltimore at the time.
Exactly. We're talking early 2000s, and Baltimore is struggling with this crazy high crime rate.
Right, makes sense.
And so the police department, they're under all this pressure to do something about it.
So they're going to crack down.
They did, and they turned to these really aggressive tactics, especially in black neighborhoods. They had these plainclothes units that were basically given free rein to target repeat offenders.
So like no oversight?
Very little. And that created an environment that was ripe for abuse, you know?
Wow, so that's where Wayne Jenkins comes in.
Yeah, so at first the podcast paints him as like this rising star.
Oh, so the classic good cop narrative.
Totally, he's decorated, known for getting results, seems super dedicated. But then we get to the Walter Price case, and that's when things start to unravel.
So this is his first run-in with internal affairs.
It is. On the surface, it just seems like a routine drug bust.
Okay.
But then you look at the CCTV footage.
Oh.
Yeah, and it totally contradicts the official police report.
So what happened?
The footage shows Jenkins and these other officers searching Price's van for like an hour. They find nothing.
Okay.
Jenkins leaves, comes back, and boom, suddenly he finds cocaine.
Wait, what? So are they implying he planted the drugs?
Well, the episode doesn't explicitly say that.
Like,
It raises some serious questions about how those drugs magically appeared.
yeah, no kidding. It definitely makes you question his whole good cop image.
It's the beginning of a pattern that suggests something way more sinister is going on.
So things are about to get really bad.
Oh, yeah, buckle up, because this is where we meet Donnie Stepp, a drug dealer who becomes a major player in Jenkins's, criminal activities.
So it goes beyond just bending the rules now.
Way beyond.
He's actively breaking the law.
Exactly. He starts stealing drugs and money from suspects, using his badge to basically enrich himself and Stepp.
This is insane. It's like he went from 0 to 60
Yeah.
in a matter of, it's hard to believe how quickly this supposed hero cop turns into a full-blown criminal.
And it's not just small-time stuff either. We're talking brazen robberies and broad daylight, splitting the loot with other officers.
It makes you wonder, how did no one notice this? How did this happen?
Right. It's not just about a few bad apples here. It's the whole system that enabled this behavior, the pressure to get results, the lack of oversight. It all created this breeding ground for corruption.
It's like that saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely.
That's a good way to put it. And things get even more complicated when you factor in the Freddie Gray incident.
Oh, yeah, right. That was a huge turning point for Baltimore.
The city was in chaos protests and unrest after Gray died in police custody.
Such a tragic case. It really highlighted the tension between the police and the community.
And in the midst of all this chaos, Jenkins, he sees an opportunity.
This guy never misses a beat, does he?
Nope. He portrays himself as a hero, buying his fellow officers dinner during the protests.
Wow.
But at the same time, he's looting prescription pills from a CVS.
Are you serious?
Oh.
What? So he's presenting himself as this savior of the city while simultaneously engaging in criminal acts.
Exactly. It's some serious moral dissonance going on.
It's unbelievable. This guy's playing everyone.
And the manipulation continues. He gets promoted to head of the gun trace task force.
Wait, hold on. The unit that's supposed to get illegal guns off the streets?
You got it. But instead of using this new position to actually help the city,
He does what?
he builds his own team of corrupt cops, handpicking officers known for bending the rules.
So basically he's creating his own little A-team of corruption.
Exactly. And we'll get into the key players in this rogue unit a little later.
Okay, this is crazy. I can't wait to hear what happens next.
So you have to remember the context here, right? Baltimore was just drowning in crime.
Right, yeah, you said that.
And the police commissioner at the time, this guy, Kevin Davis, he was obsessed with getting those numbers down, guns off the streets, drugs out of the neighborhoods,
So whatever it takes.
Pretty much. And that meant relying heavily on these plainclothes units, even with their reputation.
Yeah, that's a recipe for disaster, right?
And Jenkins, he knew how to play the system like a pro.
He was a master manipulator.
Oh, yeah. He was sending all these glowing emails to his superiors praising his team's work.
Meanwhile, they're robbing people blind.
It's insane. He was basically living a double life. presenting this facade of success.
I mean, how did his superiors not see through it? Were there no red flags, no one questioning anything?
It's hard to say for sure. Right. Maybe it was willful ignorance, or maybe there was this deeper culture within the department.
A culture of just looking the other way.
As long as the numbers looked good.
It's scary to think about.
And it wasn't just the higher-ups either.
Oh, really?
You have officers like Gondo and Ray. They actually approached Jenkins with their own scheme.
To do what?
To rob this suspected drug dealer, Ronald Hamilton.
They were going straight to their leader with this.
They knew he wouldn't just let it slide. They figured he'd be all in.
It's crazy how normalized this corruption had become.
It's like they saw robbing suspects as some kind of bonus, a perk of the job.
Jeez. It's a slippery slope when the people who are supposed to be upholding the law are the ones breaking it.
And it just keeps escalating.
Right. Jenkins gains more power, and his team gets even bolder.
They're disabling body cameras, planting evidence. They're basically a gang with badges.
It's insane.
And all the while, he's still running his drug operation with Donnie Stepp.
This guy's got a lot going on.
It's like he had all these different compartments in his life, and he somehow kept them all separate.
That takes some serious mental gymnastics.
And he's convinced he's going to get away with it all.
But the walls are closing in.
They are. We left off with Ivan Bates, the defense attorney who's been on Jenkins's trail.
Right. He finally gets his chance with Oris Stevenson.
Yeah, the client who's actually willing to stand up to Jenkins.
That takes guts.
It does. Stevenson agreed not only to testify against him, but to wear a wire.
Wow. Hoping to catch Jenkins in the act.
That's a game changer.
But taking down someone like Jenkins, even with evidence and a witness, it can't be easy.
Oh, it's a huge uphill battle. This case really shows you how hard it is to hold police accountable.
You mean like the blue wall of silence?
Exactly. There's this strong code of silence. It's hard to break through.
So even as the feds start investigating, there's pushback.
Definitely people don't want to believe that cops are capable of this.
It's easier to just ignore it.
But the evidence keeps piling up. Phone taps, financial records, witness testimonies.
And then there are those wiretap recordings.
Oh, yeah, those are damning. You literally hear Jenkins and his team talking about their crimes.
Planning their next move.
Bragging about how they can get away with anything.
It's chilling.
It shows you what happens when power goes unchecked.
And of course, as things get worse.
The team starts to crumble.
For everyone for themselves.
They turn on each other. Their loyalty disappears.
It's always like that in the end.
So it's the combination of people like Stevenson and Bates and the investigators and the cracks in that blue wall that finally bring Jenkins down.
What a story.
But it's not over yet. We still need to talk about the bigger picture.
What do you mean?
This case exposed the rot within the Baltimore Police Department, but what about the system that allowed it to happen in the first place?
So it's crazy to think that this whole time the Gun Trace Task Force is out there committing all these crimes.
Oh, yeah.
And they're still getting all this praise from their superiors.
It's wild.
Like, how long could they have kept this up? It feels like it was bound to explode at some point.
Oh, it was definitely a house of cards, but, Jenkins might have fooled his bosses, but he underestimated the people who were on to him from the start.
You mean like Ivan Bates?
Exactly. That guy was playing the long game, meticulously building his case, just waiting for the right opportunity.
But even with all his work, he couldn't have done it alone, right?
No way he needed more than just a disgruntled client. He needed hard proof.
And someone willing to put themselves on the line.
Right. Someone who'd be willing to face Jenkins and his crew.
Which is a terrifying thought.
Totally. But that's where Oris Stevenson comes in.
That guy was incredibly brave.
He agreed to testify against Jenkins and even wear a wire.
Jeez, that's risky.
Super risky, but it was a turning point in the whole case.
So that's when the feds really start to take notice.
Right, but even with a witness and evidence, taking down this level of corruption is no easy feat.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, think about it. These are cops we're talking about.
Exactly. They're protected by this whole system, this culture of silence and loyalty.
The blue wall.
Exactly. And we see that play out as the investigation progresses. There's resistance. People just don't want to believe that cops could be capable of this.
It's like they're in denial.
Kind of. It's easier to dismiss the evidence than to face the truth.
But the truth always comes out eventually.
It does. And in this case, the evidence was overwhelming.
What kind of evidence?
Phone taps, financial records, witness testimonies, it was all there.
And those wiretap recordings were pretty damning, right?
Oh, yeah. You hear Jenkins and his team talking about their crimes in their own words.
Like planning their next move?
Bragging about how they're going to get away with it all.
It's crazy to think that these guys thought they were untouchable.
It shows you how power can distort reality.
So what happens next?
Well, as the pressure mounts, Jenkins and his crew start to crack.
So the loyalty starts to fade.
Completely. They turn on each other trying to save themselves.
It's always like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
When things get tough,
Yeah.
everyone looks out for number one.
It's a classic story of betrayal and self-preservation.
So in the end, it's the combination of Stevenson's courage, Bates's persistence, and the work of those investigators that brings this whole corrupt operation down.
Yeah, it's a testament to the power of holding people accountable.
But this case is about more than just a few bad cops, right?
Exactly. It exposed a much deeper problem within the Baltimore Police Department.
A system that allowed this corruption to thrive.
We have to look at the bigger picture. The lack of oversight, the pressure to get results, the culture of silence, it all contributed to this.
So where do we go from here? What can we learn from all of this?
Well, I think it highlights the urgent need for police reform.
Yeah, like what kind of reforms?
We need more transparency and accountability within law enforcement. We need to address the systemic issues that allow corruption to flourish.
It's a tall order.
It is, but it's a conversation we need to have, and we need to keep pushing for change.
Well said. This deep dive into the Gun Trace Task Force has been a wild ride.
It really has.
So much corruption and betrayal. It's hard to believe this is all real.
But it is, and it's a reminder that we can't be complacent.
We all have a role to play in holding those in power accountable.
And in demanding justice for the victims.
Absolutely. Thanks for breaking all this down with me today. It's been an eye-opening conversation.
Thanks for having me. It's important to keep these stories alive and to learn from them.
So to our listeners out there, stay informed, stay engaged, and keep fighting the good fight for a more just and equitable world. That's it for this deep dive. Thanks for tuning in.